Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Black Expat Experience, a podcast highlighting the lived experiences of Black expats around the world. I am Kendall Tyson, your host, licensed therapist and fellow Black expat, living in Beijing, but currently on vacation back in Texas. I always say this, and it's always true. We have another great episode in store for you today. So I'd like to start by welcoming our newest guest, Dr. Aaron Jones, to the show. Hi, Aaron.
Hello, how you doing today?
I am doing well. I'm so grateful for you being here today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. So to get things started, I like the guests to give us a little picture of who you are. So please share with us your little elevator pitch. Who are you, sir?
Okay. Well, my name is Dr. Aaron Jones. I come to you by way of Pennsylvania. I spent my formative years between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. I was actually born in Virginia. Met my wife when I was 14. We have two beautiful children. Went to college on a football scholarship. And here I am just trying to live my life, watch my kids grow here in Doha, Qatar, working as a school counselor here at ASD, which we call the American School of Doha. I wear a couple of hats. I am the director of guidance and college placement, but I also wear the DEI hat, working with the curriculum. I'm an adjunct professor at St. Joseph's University. I teach doctoral students in a doctoral program. So I do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, trying to stay busy. My granny always says, idle hands do the devil work. So try to keep it rolling.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know all of that. I was looking through the information that you said in your demo information. I am always intrigued to hear, especially Black men. We were just saying this before the show started, that you're doing so much, you're out in the world raising your kids internationally. And it just always surprises me when I hear other people share, like with their spouses, like where they met, and to have known yours since 14. Oh,
yeah.
I can only imagine like the growth and transition that you all have undergone together.
Oh my goodness. Well, we haven't been dating that long. We've known each other that long.
Okay.
Things have changed a lot. The dynamics of our relationships have shifted a lot. And honestly, she's part of the reason why it was such an easy transition to come abroad. We dated, let me start at the beginning. University of Pittsburgh has this amazing program called Investing Now. I don't know why other universities and other major cities haven't replicated this model, but it's simple. Each summer, you invited kids from the inner city to spend 6 or 8 weeks and take a crash course on every class you're going to take the upcoming year.
Oh, wow.
So every year you get a primer in all of these major topics that you're going to come across when you get to school. So when you get to school, when it counts, nothing's unfamiliar. You just go through, you crush it. They have tutoring services all year round, free library, you get a college ID. So it really gets kids into this college going culture early. And lectures, trips all around the, I mean, it's an amazing program. So we met there, we were 14 going into high school. We dated after college, so we went our separate ways for uni. And hot and heavy right after college, I wasn't quite mature enough. And she said, you know what? I'm moving to Korea. Yeah, so she was working at a hog. Yeah, you know. Her and her girlfriends had a really, really popular blog at that time. I was following it, reading it. She started talking about this guy in the blog, and I was like, no way. So sent this email. She said, if you mean what you say, prove it. And the rest was history.
Listen, I am all for his sister that is like, show me, don't tell me. And these are the standards. And exactly. Brothers that do the work. Right. Yeah, congratulations. So she started in South Korea.
She started in South Korea first, you know, and so we always said that if we had kids, it'd be really, really super cool to raise our kids abroad. Initially, I was like, no way. Yeah. When I was getting a master's degree, I was working at Villanova, my alma mater, which you see over, I guess, this shoulder.
Yeah.
They had a freshman retention program that I used to help create and work in as a young man. I met this gentleman. He spent his high school years in Japan, actually. Black kid, you know, typical athletic Black kid in the teenage years, very flamboyant, very charismatic, lots of energy, but he also speaks fluent Japanese. And I just thought he was the coolest kid. And I was
Wow.
like, you know, if I ever have my son, I would want my son to be similar to that. So fast forward, had an opportunity to come abroad, said, hey, would you want to, let's raise our kids abroad? She said, I'd love to go back. Here we are, been 5 years.
love it. So I want to, what I have all these thoughts in my head. I know I have this list of questions, which I do ask, but
Okay.
as a counselor, as a therapist, there's always these tangents. And I'm really curious about how you see yourself, how you have transitioned to the man that you are now from the time. How long have you been abroad?
This will be going into year 5.
Okay. Yeah. I just finished my 5th year. I'm going to year 6. So from like the interest being piqued to this point and the things that you've been able to do, like what are some areas do you think that you've been able to hone and grow into over this time?
I think being abroad has really allowed me to come into myself. What I mean when I say that is in America, introversion is not rewarded.
Mm,
And if I'm really honest with myself, I'm really introverted at heart.
mm-hmm.
I come from a small school. I had really popular friends. And I play a sport that typically you expect a bit more arrogance, a bit more flamboyance. And so playing that part, I guess that part of my life, I presented myself very extroverted, but that wasn't really me.
Yeah.
And honestly, coming abroad to a place where no one knows me was the best thing for me and my family because it really allowed me to start to look inward and to develop some of my other interests. And where I really started to found some joy abroad, especially during the pandemic, which was the thing, of course. So yeah, I think that, you know, just getting out of that rat race that you get to being in the US, especially on the East Coast. I'm not quite sure what it's like in Texas, but growing up in Philadelphia after uni, so many people go to New York. Philadelphia is a big city. People wear that 50, 60, 70-hour work week like a badge of honor, and just trying to get out of that rat race and try to
Yeah.
live, you know, live for me, you know?
Yeah, which is difficult for so to share that, I can imagine I'm listening to you how it is as a northern individual and raised as a southern Black woman, like that cape, that, providing for everyone, putting everyone before your needs, making sure that you do it all right, being spiritual and a good girl and hyper educated and all these things. It takes such a toll on you. And me personally, I've always wanted to go abroad. It has always been a part of my schema, like my envisionings for my life. And I just never knew what that looked like. And someone brought the opportunity to me, literally every job that I've had abroad. And I'm curious about, when you made this decision, like what did the journey look like? I know that you shared that your wife, had an opportunity and that kind of, raised your spidey senses. But what did it look like for you to go from working in the States to now thriving abroad in Doha?
Okay. Well, I believe, well, at least in my experience, God comes to me in threes.
Mm,
So the first inkling was when I was working at Villanova. We hosted Villanova had this amazing freshman retention program, and it will draw a lot of attention from other universities trying to replicate it. We had a counselor fly-in, which I come to know is a really popular thing for international counselors then. This was in 2008. I met this Black guy who was about my age, who was in Guadalajara, Mexico, talking about just having this crazy life. And I really didn't click then that this was something that I would even consider. The
right.
second opportunity was when my wife went abroad. And then the third one, the thing that was really the most pulling was I was at a conference, 2018, met a guy at a conference. You know how conference vibes are. You meet
Yeah.
people like-minded. You just start talking about your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations, and you give
Yeah.
out tons of business cards, right?
Yeah.
Every once in a while, something comes from those contacts, and this is one of them. A gentleman that I met there, when he didn't tell me then, was he was a recruiter for Carney Sando. I had no interest in going abroad. I was working at this amazing school for all boys, which I really loved, working in that same gender environment with young men in the city. But one of the things that we do as counselors, especially as university counselors, but I'm sure you do the same thing as a social emotional counselor, we try to encourage young people to follow their dreams. We try
Yeah.
to encourage them to be bold, to do something different, to bet on yourself. to quiet those voices in your mind, have some positive self-talk. And so
Yeah.
I thought it would be a bit hypocritical for me to have this opportunity. And I tell my kids to do things bold and for me to not also do it. So it was a little bit of, you talk the talk, but are you going to walk the walk? And it was the best decision I ever made. Best decision I ever made. I wish I did it. I wish I did it in 08 when my homie was like, yo, you missing out. But
I love it. I love it. I love how you share things come in threes, right? That God speaks to you in threes. And my mom is always like, you entertain angels unaware. You just really got to pay attention to the patterns in your life. And if I am in alignment with what you're saying, because I really am, I can look back and I can trace like specific patterns of behavior and happenings that lead to like these big leaps that have been things that I've wanted to do, but I've not known what does that process look like. But then that door is open and it's just like, this is what you asked for. The opportunity is here. So are you going to walk through the door, or are you going to let fear kind of take hold and make it difficult for you to live the life that you've always envisioned? And I'm curious. We were having this conversation with Jamie and then another counselor friend of mine the other day, talking about the stronghold that fear has in our community when it comes to stepping outside of like cultural norms and breaking out of the box or that predetermined role that somebody else already has for you. And I'm wondering, like, what with this specifically, with coming abroad, has fear played a role? Was there at any point where you recognize that this is it? And if I don't, grapple with these feelings that I'm having, I might miss out on this opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're always a bit fearful for something different. I think for me, the biggest fear was professionally,
Mm.
because I was coming from an organization where I had complete autonomy.
Oh,
And autonomy is a very, 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 very precious thing. You don't
yes.
realize.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm at this amazing school. People respect me, people trust me, people ask my opinion on things. And I was like, I'm not sure I'm ready to go into another organization that I don't know, you
Yeah.
know? But in the back of my mind, I think for me, my reason for coming abroad was for my kids. So anytime I have a hard day at school or at work, I always look at them and see how much they're flourishing. And so for me, the fear isn't really something that I was taught as a young person. I lived a life that was interesting to say the least. But I think the thing that's most present in my life was as a young person is I grew up with my grandparents. My grandfather was a Baptist minister, and he really talked a lot about fear, the fear that the relationship between faith and fear. And so I don't know if I really identified with the feeling of fear more so than, just the unknown, and
Mm.
how to make sense of this something that's new and you have no experience in and things of that nature.
I hear that. So then I recognize it is getting comfortable with uncertainty,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that it's part of the process. And
Right.
I am so grateful that you had an upbringing where fear wasn't as salient. I definitely wish I could say the same. But and I'm wondering how, like, what does that look like? How does it play out in your life now as you're raising children?
That's interesting. That's a really good question. I grew up, split my time as a young person, like as I said, alluded to before. My youngest years, I grew up in Marionberry, DC. Okay, so peak crack epidemic, late
Yeah,
80s, early 90s, very violent city. Moved to Pittsburgh, where gang violence was also very prevalent, right? And the neighborhoods and the drive-by shootings. And so like this was my childhood. And
yeah.
so I think you think about it as a parent in terms of like danger, and fear of letting your kids go out. But I also played a very violent sport, right? So it's like, I don't know. I think it's really hardened me, and really forced me to look inward, develop the sense of work ethic, and really having to do hard things every single day. You sort of build confidence, but it's really hard raising a parent, as a parent raising young people, where those sorts of incremental challenges don't always exist. Like when I was my son's age, I had to get myself off the bus, look after my little sister to my little until they came home from work. My son has a nanny, so it's like you provide a life for him
Yeah.
that I could never dream of myself. But how do you also try to instill, these ethics of,
Yeah.
thrift
Yeah.
and modesty and humility, and you know, it's an everyday struggle. But we start incremental, giving them little responsibilities, make your bed, first thing, letting his nanny know, look, no, he's gonna clean his own bathroom, So these little things that we're trying to build in for him to try to learn some responsibility and what it means to be a young man, and especially supposed to be what it means to be a Black man. So here we go.
Yeah.
Pray for me.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I'm always curious about things, clearly. Working in the school that I work in China, we have one young Black man in high school who I love dearly. Like, I take care of him. And I don't have to do much because he's magnanimous and caring and respectful and hardworking and like he's all the things. And I'm always curious about like his identity formation and understanding and development of who he is, like culturally and things of that nature. So I'm wondering, as you share like raising, a young Black man, how is that? I hear what you're saying. When we think about like the cultural aspects and then having to go out into the world, what are some of the things that you recognize that you do or may do or think about as it comes to having him to really have a love and appreciation for himself and his culture, living abroad? Because we know we don't get all the positive representations every day.
Right. Well, I don't know this to be gospel yet, but this is what my thinking is. I don't think you realize what culture is until you move away.
Mm,
So, growing up the way I grew up, it was just normal. Like, this is what we did, you
right.
know? So, like, the music that we listen to, TV shows that we watch, the company that we keep, it just sort of seemed like this is what we do. This is just like
Right.
this social learning phenomenon, I think, is really what's most impactful for young people. But he's at the age now where he's reading, and he's at the age now where he wants things. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, oh, you want a new pair of sneakers? You want this new video game? All right, bet. Go grab this book off the shelf, read this,
Yeah.
come back and tell me about it. And then we could talk about, if you still want whatever it is you want. So I think that we've been fortunate here in Qatar that there is a strong Black community. Again, how I met Jamie. We do fellowship often. His two best friends here in Qatar are two little Black boys, and which is great for him, but even better for my wife and I, because we actually like his parents, because it's so natural. We have, the guy, and I have a daughter too, and so like they're so nice to her. So we get the
Yeah.
kids together. They have TT, and and so it's like we've been fortunate to have this extended family sort of
Yeah.
situation. And so again, it's one of the things that's keeping me here in Qatar. I know you're thinking about moving on, but I'm like, I don't know. The village here is strong. So
Yeah. Yeah, man, I'm just really happy, like, to hear that. Don't know you from Adam and getting to know you now. I'm really grateful, right? But I have all these feelings that are coming up right now when I hear that you're having such an enriching experience and that there's a community established and that your children get to see themselves mirrored in the people that they form relationship with. And that literally is one of the impetus to me doing this, creating this platform, having this show, engaging in these conversations, is for people to recognize that we literally can thrive and have these types of enriching experiences everywhere in the world. Like, we're not confined to our city streets, to our red line neighborhoods. to the states that we were born in. I mean, I love Texas, but she got a lot going on right now. And I'm so happy. Like I know how joyful I feel when I speak with Jamie about specific things. And I actually met other people that are in Qatar right now. And it's a place that I've been thinking about if I wanted to continue like working in like the international counseling space in a school. I just can't do the whole college counseling thing. So
Well, luckily, here's a little pitch, a little ploy for ASD. We are a comprehensive model.
really,
So yes, so if you would consider the Gulf, I would say, listen, consider the Gulf, because it's a wonderful community. It's a wonderful country. It's hot, but you're from Texas, right? So exactly. So hey, keep us in mind. We could definitely talk offline about the perks.
yeah, we'll do that.
The
See
community is
how the good
strong here.
stuff be happening. Stuff be happening. So
Exactly.
let me ask you, when you think about this experience, the experience that you're engaging in as an expat, is that what you call yourself? Do you call yourself an expat?
That's a really interesting question. I just asked my students that last week in class, who gets to call themselves an immigrant, who gets to call themselves an expat. Um, so the decision's out. I think expat is something that speaks from a place of privilege,
Oh,
that the ability to step away from your country. A lot of people don't have the resources to be able to go away. And so if because I don't listen, I love America, right? What the Baldwin say, because I love America so much, I reserve the right to criticize her. But I don't really see myself going back, right? Maybe I'm an expat because maybe my time here in Doha is temporary. Um, but wherever I decide to say like this is it for life, then I think I will call myself an immigrant because I plan to be all
wow.
in whatever place that may be.
That is such an interesting perspective. And expat versus immigrant, I could see how immigrant would lend itself more accuracy, especially since you, based off what I hear you sharing, have a more rooted community. Like clearly you love the work that you do. It is in your wheelhouse. You want to stay. And then when I think about expat, having the resources to leave our country of origin, be anywhere, I would definitely probably identify, at least living in China, more with that expat. There's a community there that I've cultivated. A lot of my friends have moved on, which makes it even more challenging to stay. And with this being my last year, it's sometimes feels like there's a bit more of a separation because the culture is so vastly different, not wrong or anything like that, but harder to gain entrance into. Even though I have Chinese friends that I love dearly and will miss when I leave, but oh my God, I gotta ponder that. I've not had many people stump me before.
It's an interesting question, and I would agree with your sentiments here. I think the Qataris are very hospitable as a people. I think the Gulf in particular, Qatar, UAE. I don't know as much about Oman or Saudi, our neighbors, but they've essentially imported the whole middle class. They are minorities in their own country, and so I think with that comes a little defensiveness. But I think understand the mutual relationship is beneficial for both of us. But they have very specific laws around who can stay here forever. And
Okay.
so you just know your time in Qatar is gonna come to an end at some point.
Yeah.
So, you just try to be as thankful as you can for the time that you're here. And I plan to stay here as long as they'll have me. I love it here. So we shall see. But if I was gonna go somewhere else, like I said, maybe when I get a little bit older, when I'm looking to retire, then I might consider myself an immigrant because whoever's gonna allow me to come and die there, I think that speaks a lot to the reciprocity of the relationship between the government, the state, whomever, however you want to phrase it, and the individual. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Man, I really appreciate that. This framework is making me really consider, especially when I think about where I want to go next in the world. Like I know that I'll have America as a home base in Texas because I love my parents, but I know that we work each other's nerves when I be in their house for too long.
I can
it's
relate to that.
it's like having a home base, but knowing it's like an umbilical cord, kind of knowing that there's always this connection to home. And I don't even know if home is appropriate. I feel like there's this connection to my place of origin, but that I really truly feel like a true person of the global majority, like out in the world, that feels a lot more secure to me. Um, and I've heard this from, lots of friends and then I'm single. So it's just like, I don't have a tether as far as a husband or children yet. And so I could literally exist anywhere in the world that I want to. But it's an interesting concept that I feel like I'm going to write a blog about. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Hey, let's do it.
How has this experience changed your life? Like, as I don't even want to use the word expat. As an individual that's chosen to really take root in Qatar, how do you believe like your perspective and your priorities have shifted?
Well, I think, like I said before, the reason I came was from my family. So that was, the priority number one. It's very easy to be family centric here. In Philadelphia, I like to eat, and there's some amazing restaurants in Philadelphia. But if you were to bring a kid there, people's heads would spin around 360. Whereas, the best restaurants here, you're gonna maybe see a kid at, right? And so it's a very family oriented place to be. It's very safe. I don't worry, about my kid going out at night. Here's a great example. We have been in Qatar for maybe a month, 2 months. My daughter was 6 or 8 months old, like a baby, baby. My son is a lot like me, in that he's very
Cautious.
slow to warm up. Yeah, perfect word. Cautious. He's a bit introverted. And coming from Philadelphia, busy city. So on our compound, we have like a little bodega. We call it the small store. And so I one of my favorite things about being abroad is getting able to take a nap every day. And
Oh,
so, hey, listen, the nap ministry, sister in the nap ministry, she be talking some interesting stuff.
okay.
Yeah, so I'm taking a nap one day. I could hear my wife come in with the kids. The baby's sleeping in the stroller. She wants to hop in the shower, so not gonna miss the baby in the stroller. You know what? She went to the store. She came in, dropped the kids off, and went back to the store. And so my son take my daughter outside in the stroller down the 2 steps that we have in front of our house around to the small store,
Oh,
right?
he went
And
to
so,
the journey.
right? I mean, it's about, I don't know, not far,
Yeah.
a quarter of a mile. But in Philadelphia, there would have been cops knocking on my door.
And you
Like,
would
you
have had
got,
your kids taken.
oh goodness. But the fact that he felt comfortable enough to take
Yeah.
his sister in the stroller around the corner to the small store. He's 4 years old, So that's what Qatar is. It's that
Yeah.
sense of safety, that sense of security, um, that sense of I think that's it for me. I sleep
Yeah.
like a baby here. I remember the very first night, um, it was so quiet that it startled me awake. That the city life comes with buses and ambulance and sirens, and of course, there's a gunshot every once in a while. But here, man, it's like when it's nighttime, it's nighttime. It's like quiet. It's like nothing moving. It's like the most peaceful. So I think the peace, the mental clarity that comes with peace, the ability to really, like I said, own my extroversion. I've really gotten into art. You see the art on the wall. I've turned my office into a mini gallery space of sorts. To be able to learn more about art and express myself through the art that I've decided to display in my office. Talking about art, going to Italy and seeing the art, it's just like being able to be me. Like, I guess the simple way will be this self-actualization Maslow talks about right on his little pyramid. But I think it's simpler than that. I think it's just comfort and space to just be.
Oof. And I connect to that. That resonates with me so much. As you were speaking on your baby boy taking your daughter on a journey in the street, in the neighborhood, right?
Problem, right? Yeah.
Then even being like China is super safe. It's a bit startling that it's super safe, right? And so when you shared how like at night, just that stillness, that the starkness of now versus then, there was a statement that I made a few interviews ago that the silence is so quiet that it's actually really loud because now there's like this oneness with all the thoughts and feelings and emotions that you're having and having to process because you've made this big decision and now you're here and life is different. And that brings me to ask you this question. As I hear you sharing these things and recognizing that you're in a space where you can better self-actualize, engage in the things that bring you joy, what do you believe that you've had to unlearn, right, to be able to engage with the peace that this place brings you?
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting question. That happened really soon on. I think it's comes from being in this very international environment. At the school that I work in, there are 89 nationalities represented.
Oh, wow.
And the faculty is almost as diverse. And so when you think about workplace dynamics in Philly, what do? We're there first. We're going to be the last one to leave, this 50, 60-hour work week. People used to be like, well, go home. Like, I felt like this idea of go, 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 go actually bit me in the butt early on because it was really, I wasn't being perceived by my team in the way that I needed to be in order to be effective, because I had this thing about me, right? And so this being able to go faster by moving slower as a really phenomenon that I think has really allowed itself to take root and blossom here. And a little phrase that I learned in Italy, dolce far niente. Have you learned this one? The sweet art of doing nothing. And maybe that's because it was the pandemic here also, that there was nothing to do. You just had to get comfortable in your space because you had to. So yeah, I think that's I think honestly, probably the best thing about being here is again having that space during the pandemic to really get in your mind and sort some things out for yourself and just sit with it and figure it out.
I appreciate that. It lends like just a different type of mental acuity, mental clarity, mindfulness, I think you would say, and presence, right? Being able to really be present and notice and change are some of the things that I've noticed with myself and people that I engage with, that time feels different when we're not fighting so hard for survival, when we're not engaged in that rat race like you shared, and when we're really able to, one, enjoy the work that we're doing, and two, fully engage like in our family life or community life, whatever that looks like for everybody, because it's going to be different. And so I kind of want to shift. I mean, it's all interconnected. You've spoken a bit about like how you feel really embedded into the community that you've chosen. And I'm wondering, when you think about I know the question, like, how has the concept of like chosen family like impacted your life, your mental health, like your overall, holistic wellness?
Yeah, I think that's the thing about being abroad that I love the most. There's not really that small talk that you get stateside. I don't know what it is. Like the relationships with the people you meet abroad, they seem to be much deeper, much quicker, and
Yes,
so
that part.
I don't know what happens or what's the reason in which that transpires, but being abroad with two small kids away from the support that you have at home, and I'm not a person that asks for help. That's something that I need to work on myself. I understand that, but the family chose us here. You know what I mean? And so like day one, people are literally knocking on my door like, yo, what do you need? Yo, we're going to the store. I know you don't have a car yet. Like, come with. Like, I know you got this small baby. My daughter's old enough to babysit, right? And so those are the things that, I needed for myself, because I believe God knows me. I wouldn't have put myself out there in that way. But people have taken us in. And I think that a lesson I learned early is the only way that you can keep what you have is by giving it away. And so just being
Ooh.
able to pay that forward when the opportunity comes for people who have come behind me, putting my arm around people, showing them the way, and not giving them a choice in the matter, sort of saying like, you are part of this community, and you're a part of us. You're with us now. So
I
that's
love
how
it.
it works. I try to keep that going forward.
I like it. One, I appreciate the self-awareness, right? That there's this struggle with stepping out, asking for help. Well, and fully understanding that, yes, we're coming into a completely different environment that we don't know much about other than what you share interview-wise and maybe collaborate with the people. But I'm happy for you that you recognize they're offering, let me take it.
Right.
It's a complete, I wonder, is it a complete shift in like self-understanding, like growth, personal growth that you've had to undergo?
I think so. And I think a lot of it is wrapped up in this idea of image.
Mm.
And like I said before, back home, my friends, I'm blessed to run in a circle of people that are very successful. And I used to think that asking for help meant that there was a deficiency with me in some way, shape, or form. And because of that sort of experience and that environment that I ran in, I felt really I wasn't willing to do that, right? And so I think, again, coming here where no one knew me, which is sort of antithetical, right? Because I knew more people there, more people were willing to help. But here, having such a smaller community really forces you to rely on one another. And I think that that's what I needed. I think I needed that smaller environment that really forced me to be accountable to other people as well.
Mm.
Um, to pull me along that journey, to feel comfortable saying, hey, yo, can you watch my kids for so and so? My son's got soccer. I got my daughter, she's getting her hair braided. Do you mind taking my son to soccer practice? Like, I'll pick him up if you could drop him off. I'll pick your son up too, right? So having to learn to share those responsibilities and those duties of parenting in the community is why I'm thriving here. Honestly, if it wasn't for the community, I don't know if I would have stayed this long, of course, and I don't know if I'd be as happy. I don't know if my skin would be as glowing like it is, all those things, right? So
It just clear. Okay.
been
Oh,
blessed, I'm drinking my water, minding my business, and just trying to, play my part in the community.
listen, I just to hear these things, and I'm always gonna speak candidly from a Black man, to me is so important because we have I mean, you would know better than I would. I just work with them in therapy. I'm in a relationship with them as friends, and I got a daddy, and a brother-in-law. Has your idea of like masculinity, vulnerability, identity shifted in this space?
Not at all. I
Mm.
think it's become more present
Mm.
because I come from a family of helpers. Like I said, my grandfather is a Baptist minister, like Southern Baptist.
I know what
He's
that means.
he gonna get up in the pulpit, he gonna sing, and like he's gonna be moved by the Holy Spirit, right? Like, and so like this idea of being vulnerable in front of people and helping people, like going the extra mile for people, is what I grew up with. My parents have their own practice. Both my parents were therapists, so this is the family business in a
Oh,
way, right?
so yeah,
Exactly.
you have a
So like
different understanding.
I this is the way I grew up, being very affectionate, the
Yeah.
hugs, like how are you feeling, like being able to identify your emotions and speak to them. But of course, I'm not perfect. Like I said, I play American football. Like it breeds like this idea of toughness and rah rah, go get them, and like this hyper masculine environment, right? And that's really interesting dynamic to play with because, like I said, I'm introverted, but playing Division I football in this very hyper masculine situation it's an interesting, those are some interesting sort of relationships to navigate.
Right.
And so, just trying to
Hey,
learn a bit.
son.
You want to say hi? They can't see it. He's because I got
Look,
my
Titi
stand.
Kendall love the kids. Hey, oh, such a cutie patootie.
Hey, thank you. So yeah, just here to trying to be more of myself. And I think, like I said before, like being here allows me to be me because I don't have the preconceived notions put upon me because people who've only known me from my football days. And so
Yeah,
here, people just know me as Aaron, which I prefer. And I can let them know those parts of me as I see fit, which is cool.
I appreciate it. So I clearly being in the community, like as a Black individual, hasn't, well, I don't want to make any assumptions. The type of experiences I would imagine in Qatar are very different than the ones in Beijing. And I'm wondering, when you think about what has been, as a Black man, a father, a counselor, working in the DEI space, what have been some of the opportunities that you've noticed you've had to kind of tap into your gifts and your strengths and like to hold space for other people, to grow?
Sure. I think that that's what we do every day as school-based counselors.
Yeah.
Um, Especially, it's really interesting here at an international school where, with the title, the American School of, we bring all this American problems in a way, right? These American ideas, these deficits, these shortcomings, and so it's really interesting working here where you have people who are coming from, like I said, 89, 90 nationalities, all of these experiences coming here in this Western environment. So there's always this give and take, this push and pull between Western or American values and maybe they're Eastern or conservative, maybe they're Muslim and conservative, right? There's always this pull, like young people are trying to figure out who they are. At home, they're one way. Their parents speak like this, but at school, my friends are talking about like this, or listen to this music, they're watching these movies. And so trying to, again, in this office that I call myself, because I'm at school right now,
Okay.
to create this safe space to allow people to explore. I'm sure you learned this in counseling school. I really am Rogerian in my approach and trying to create this environment where people can be themselves. And I work really, really hard at trying to create this safe space where people can try to be who they are, at least if nowhere else in these four walls. And then, of course, reflecting back to them how that may be perceived, um, and who you want to be and trying to empower and encourage them to be the person that they want to be. So that's just the job, the job. So I'm just fortunate here to be seen and appreciated by students that I've never been seen before. Like they chose me to be their commencement speaker. You can't see this wall right here, but it's
Wow.
full of thank you cards. Like in Philly, I never got a thank you card. Like I got a whole wall of thank you cards. I feel affirmed as an educator here more than I have in all of my years. And so I think it's because people are curious about me. People are open to having new experiences as opposed to maybe in America, this was just the next step, right? Like, it's like, this is what we do next. And
Yeah.
it's like to an extent, but the environment is a bit different here because everyone's really trying to figure out who they are and how they fit in. Like this idea of identity is really, really big here.
Man, listen, the wall of thank yous and the affirming emails and the notes that kids leave. I always tell people, if you are blessed enough to get them, keep every last one.
So absolutely.
Because on those days when you just like, do I really want to do this? Yes, this is why.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't know what it's like in China. I would assume that they're very appreciative there as well. I understand that educators are seen in a different light than perhaps educators in other parts of the world. So the love is flowing both ways. It's really, you really love to see it.
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit more, a little bit different here in China. While there's this curiosity, there's also like this class thing because the people in my
Uh,
school are like gobs of money, right? But then I'm like, y'all have some of the same, if not the same, challenges of the kids that I've worked with in America. Add the affluent neglect to that, and not a lot of individuals are used to seeing a professional that looks like me knowledgeable in these leadership roles. And sometimes it can be a bit challenging for some to take direction or hear about mental health from myself, doing everything you can to be person-centered, always ethical, student-centered, offering information. It is a tightrope to walk. Definitely have grown in this regard as a therapist and a school counselor. So there are lots of families that are appreciative and kind and, offer that knowledge and gratitude privately and personally. I'm just hoping that I'm able to demonstrate to people that professionalism doesn't only come with white skin, because it is definitely preferred in China, and they make it very blatant about their preference. And so, oh yeah, it's quite interesting. And so not only sometimes do I find myself battling the understanding of the importance of mental health and rest and community connection and, shifting, thinking patterns and, do a lot of mental health work in my school. And most people are quite grateful. But here I am introducing all these things that are going to cause you to shift and change the way that you're used to behaving. And I'm not looking for anybody to change their culture. I want you to love it, appreciate it, and also understand that there is a bridge to gap when it comes to deepening our understanding of the cultural practices that really help us be our best self and incorporating skills that are going to help you to understand what is a mentally well individual. Not even saying that it has to be Western, but if you're paying attention to these specific behaviors that we all have at some point, how do we engage with that with the best of our culture and the best of this new knowledge to help your child?
Right.
That's the end goal, period.
Right. And with looking at schools through that lens, you're going to have job security, because that's always going to be the struggle, especially at international schools, because, you are the sum of your experiences. And when you come from one environment and you place yourself in a completely different one, it's only natural to divert. I guess I don't diverse not the right word, but it's like almost reflexive to operate in a way in which you've always operated. And so that constant bringing to the forefront, hey, these behaviors, these attitudes, this perspective, this way of speaking to one another, and that's always going to be valuable in a school setting, where we're supposed to be teaching people how to be the best versions of themselves and how to keep this earth spinning to the best of our ability. Because you got to learn how to work with one another and talk to one another. And, I think that school should be, the breeding ground for those sort of conversations. Like, this is the safe space to have those conversations before you get out into these Fortune 500 companies, into these high, powerful, blah, blah, blah. And you don't know how to talk to people. The stakes are much higher. But I think that really comes from us, the adults, trying to follow those behaviors with one another and putting our own shortcomings on display, using them as learning opportunities for the kids to see that, we aren't perfect either, that we are learning and evolving every day as well. And so I'm just really fortunate to be here in an environment that those sorts of conversations are supported. Of course, we have our opportunities like everywhere else, but the good news is we aren't stagnant. We are moving in the right direction, right? And it's like that identity, that admission of here's who we are and here's who we want to be, I think makes all the difference. And so, like I said, I just love it here.
Yeah, if we're getting in like the DEI mental health part, right? One of the things that I definitely want to hear more about what that role looks like for you in Qatar, because I know a friend of mine who is like the DEI leader at my school, her husband, who happens to be going to be leading the high school next year. We have a large percentage of staff who are not people of the global majority. And there has been such a blowback to really being global minded, really living the value of welcoming diverse perspectives and understanding And for me, the baseline, the foundation of the work at this school that I'm responsible for, I'll be leading next year, is cultural responsiveness, right? We all have to be culturally responsive and engage in humility and recognize the value of the diverse perspectives that are baked into the model, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does that look like? How does that look in your role as you lead like that work? And what kind of like maybe one or two tips could you give as a DEI, practitioner in an international school specifically,
Yes.
to implement?
You got to be, in my opinion, you have to do a couple of things. One, you got to understand that you aren't going to get much accomplished in any given school year. I live by the Kobe Bryant approach, which is, can you get 1% better?
Yeah.
And take your wins where you can. You gotta get some allies. You gotta start small and be incremental, but always got to be working your plan. And so, my work has been largely in the curriculum. And so what I did the first couple years was just really take a deep dive into the written curriculum. Spent a lot of time in classrooms, which is an even harder part because teaching is so intimate almost. Like people don't always want to open up their doors to random observers. Sometimes they see it as evaluative. And so how do you form relationships with the faculty and create a culture of coaching that allows you to just pop up in the classroom, see what you're teaching, seeing the connections from what you see in the written curriculum to the taught curriculum, and have those conversations about feedback and sharing of resources and professional learning opportunities. And so that's sort of the space that I've been trying to hold. And again, it's been incremental. It sounds good when I'm speaking it right now, but trust me, I've been at this desk pounding my fist on it many, many times because I feel like it should be moving faster, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like, okay, did ASD get 1% better today? Yeah, we did. And then you multiply that over multiple days, and you're like, look, we're way far ahead than where we came from. And so I think that understanding that it is the long haul. It is the long haul. And so 1% at a time, I think is the only way it gets done, or only way it gets any progress.
Yeah.
So have a plan, work your plan, and try to get 1% better.
I like that. I like that. So I've not interviewed many people who both their parents are therapists. I think it's fabulous. And then I wonder what a child of therapists would think, growing up. How do you notice that your mental health has been impacted, from transitioning abroad to really thriving to even making the decision to be here long term?
Yeah. I think I know I'm in a good place with my mental health when I can talk to it, when I can speak to it clearly, right? I feel like when I'm in the storm, like I can't really identify, I need to process it. I'm a processor. And so I think, growing up, my parents always gave me the space to process. I think a lot of times in the mental health journey, people are like, let's talk about it. But I think sometimes when you're forced to talk like on the spot, it comes out explosive. And then that sort of derails the whole conversation. It really derails the whole relationship sometimes. And so I think, from my parents' perspective, like they were always honest with me. They were always, and they allowed me time to like come back and like, let's circle back on that. Right. And like, I think that, one of the things that I really want to try to do to my kids, especially to my son, because he's so much like me, is when he says he doesn't want to talk, I don't force him to, but I also let him know that like, I'm not going to forget about it either. You know what I mean? Like we can circle back, but we're circling back. So we can do this now or we can do this later, but we're going to do it, you know? And so a lot of times it needs to be done on your terms, right? I think that agency is so important, and
Yes.
feeling like you have a say in what's happening is so important, and it
Yeah.
goes is understated. And so I think that, you know, I just try to go into with my son thinking about how I will want to respond, how and the care and the grace that my parents gave me in the process as I was growing up.
Yeah, that perspective taking is key. And I really am really grateful, right, that you've had that experience. And it's one thing to have it and then to bring your own children into the world and have to figure out, okay, what do I do? And how
Yeah.
do I help raise children who don't have to heal from their childhood?
Well, you know, I think that that's inevitable, though, right?
I was going to say that we
Yeah,
can be harmful and not know it, even in the best of our intentions.
of course. You've never been a parent before. No one's ever been a parent
Right.
before they were parents, right? And so inevitably, we're human too, right?
Yeah.
And you know, so like no one comes out of childhood unscathed. You know what I mean? Like it just you just don't, you know. And I think that you take your lumps. Hopefully, you have a people around you who will encourage you to go and talk to someone. If you can't go to, you know, the person who harmed you, and have a conversation about it, right? And you know what, you know, like I had a bad game. My parents were like, "You want to talk about it?" No, like I'm pissed off. Like we lost. Like no, I don't want to talk. I just want to be pissed right now. Like you know, all right, you know what I mean? Like and so that's what it's like. You know, and my parents aren't perfect either. You know,
Yeah.
they weren't parents before I came along. They were 24 years old when I was born. Like I can't imagine being 24 and being a parent. Like,
Oh
you know
God,
what I mean?
no.
Exactly. You know, and so maybe I shouldn't have been home alone at 8 years old, right? You know, and so maybe there is some unresolved trauma around being home alone at a young age. I don't know, but like you just do the best you can.
Yes, I find that like my mom's a counselor and she's an amazing counselor. She's won awards, all kinds of things, but I recognize sometimes that it's really, she and I are literally the same person minus 24 years. And I've noticed, I was just having this conversation with my girlfriends yesterday, and we've noticed that our generation of people, you know, parents are really unlearning and shifting our cultural understanding of how we parent, how we engage, how we give kids. Well, we can't give kids agency. We can, how do I want to word that? We can,
Voice.
yes, right. And know that it is not like a ding against the authority that we have. I don't even know if we're looking for authority at this point. It's so hard for me to articulate like the shift, the transformation that has taken place from our parents' culture to like the role of responsibility that we have right now.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
go ahead.
No, it's interesting. Yeah, and you don't really think about like the time. I feel like that time barrier is something that like so much has happened in those 24 years between the time that your mom was your age to the time when
Yeah,
she was 24 to when you were born. The same is true between the time, you know, it's just like that time continuum. So much happens, you know.
so
I
much.
don't know.
So I have just,
So
oh, go ahead.
no, that was it.
I have just like a few more questions. You
Okay.
know, I really like listening to men as they talk about how they care for themselves. And I would really like for you, one, to share what are ways of caring for yourself, self-care, wellness practices that you've recognized are non-negotiable for you to be that self-actualized individual. And it's a bifurcated question. And if you're speaking directly to another young Black man in Pennsylvania or Texas or somewhere in the world that is really considering this opportunity, what would you say?
The opportunity to go abroad,
Yeah.
go.
Full
Bar
stop.
none, go, even if it's for a year. Take one contract, 1 year, one contract, you can always go home.
Yep.
But your brain, once it grows, it never shrinks. And you have this experiences that you will never have back home. And I didn't, again, sometimes you don't realize it until you go away. I'm from Pittsburgh-ish, right? I had a lot of my first in Pittsburgh, so I associate home with Pittsburgh. I associate being a man in Philadelphia because I feel like that's where I come into my mansion. But I lived in seven different states as a young person, so I've been around. When I went back to Pittsburgh a couple of years ago, first summer after COVID, I want to take my wife to New Orleans, my favorite American city. I realized that it's so expensive to travel from Pittsburgh to New Orleans because there's no direct flights.
Crazy.
I could fly from Philly to New Orleans straight for a couple $100. It was going to cost like $1,200 to fly to New Orleans from Pittsburgh, which is ridiculous. The point that I'm trying to make is sometimes your circumstances really inhibit your ability to have these opportunities, right? And so, like, whenever you get an opportunity, young man, like, go. You can always come back. The second half of that is, what do I do for my self-care? I love to push my body to the absolute limits.
I'm such an athlete.
But you know what I've realized as an athlete is just like those really fancy cars, like they're made to be driven. Like I'm standing right now because I heard someone say sitting is like the smoking of this generation. Like sitting all day does so much harm to the body, like meant to move. And so like I love to challenge myself with the way I train, the way I lift weights, run, bike. Like I push my body to the absolute limits, and that's a non-negotiable for me. So I'm so grateful that I have a partner that allows me to be me. And I think that again, for young men out there, as you're going through life, and getting love interests, choose a partner that is going to allow you to be you 100%. Like there are some things that you need for yourself if you're honest with yourself, and your partner will never make you question that. And so don't settle. If it don't seem right, it's not. And when as corny as it is, and I know you've seen it on the back of Snapple bottle caps and memes everywhere, but it's true. When a person shows you who they are,
listen, Maya Angelou,
believe them.
The first time.
A zebra don't change its stripes.
Period. A cheetah will eat your face.
Every time. And so I listened. My mom's a therapist, right? And she's been doing some couples. And one time I heard her having a session, and she said, if it doesn't get any better than it is right now, is it good enough? And I feel like that's it. Like situation, if this is as good as it gets, if that's not good enough for you, it's time to move on. But it really, again, takes that inter-reflection to really be honest with yourself on, is this good enough for me? And so, young man, if you're listening out there, the person who's meant for you will never ask you to question the things that make you happy. And the things that make you, the things that they were attracted to, is because you got to do the things that got you to that point. And whoever that person is not going to ask you to stop doing those things.
No. Oh, so thank you for that. And I'm so glad you overheard your mom's conversation, because that little snippet, I think it is applicable to beyond just relationships. If you're looking at the way that your life is right now, if this is all it is, it's good enough. And right now I can say, yeah, right? Maybe 6 months ago, I was like, no, because I am crazy depressed and I need to make a move. But I notice that sometimes in the work that I do and the people that I talk to, the conversations I have, there's this trepidation. Again, we go to uncertainty of doing something to make that desire, that dream actionable. And it maybe not materializing the way that we have envisioned it. And I'm always like, listening and holding space for that realization, but then offering But then isn't there also the possibility that it's better? That it's different doesn't mean that it's worse. Maybe this is the path that it was supposed to be. And I truly believe that individuals that choose to make that leap and live outside of their country of origin, there's something about them, right, that is just different. I don't know quite what it is. For some people, it might be one thing. I'm wondering, what do you think?
I think that if this was 1,000 years ago, there was always those people in the tribe that wanted to be explorers. That's us.
I was muting because I was coughing. Totally.
Yeah. There's just
Totally.
some people who have like this innate curiosity just to see what's over there. Like, I'm gonna just go over there till I can't go no more. Or like, and even this is probably the same thing happened to you in your Italy. You got to your city, you put your bags down, and you said, you know what? I'm gonna come out of my accommodation. I'm gonna go left today. Tomorrow I'm gonna go right. The next day I'm gonna just go straight. I'm gonna just see what's out there. I'm gonna just go until I can't go no more, until I get too tired and want to come back.
And that's what happened. I feel like we have these Matthew Henson vibes as we're exploring and finding out, these non-explored places.
Right. Truly.
Oh, last two. I know I said that like 2 questions ago. What do you notice you need to continue your healing process?
I think I need more conversations like this. I think I need to meet and be in community with other people who've had similar experiences, but at varying stages of the journey, right? Like, I feel like now it's at the stage where I have some people who are a little bit older than me, but they're still in it.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see like how it ends. Like,
Yeah.
what are people, these Black expats who are further along on the journey, they're really like about to hang it up? Like, what does that look like? And how did they get there? I feel like we all know that each one teach one, right? Like, come bring somebody but behind you. I feel like, of course, but like, what's next? You know what I mean? Because I feel like for me to continue to heal, I need to know that it can be healed.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? We need to see that loop close. So I think for me, that's what I need to see. If you know anyone who's at the end of their journey, the sun is starting to set on them, like, I would love to be connected with those people just to sit at their feet and hear their stories, because I think that that's where the goal is at.
Listen, I was just going to say, if you know of anyone, bring them here so that we can unpack, what did you do? How did you do? Give us a blueprint. We're on this stage of the journey. I want the longitudinal success that you've had to engage in to get there. Like you're saying, I've never thought of that. So that's going to be my next, looking for. Last question or last statement. What are you most proud of when it comes to your journey?
I'm proud that I get to take this journey with my kids. I think that, I'm from the east side of Pittsburgh. My parents are children of the 80s. Like I said, Marion Barry, DC, peak crack gangs. Like, to be able to, my son's learning how to read, right? Like, he came home one day and he was like, Dad, they got these things called pyramids. I'm like, yeah. He's like, you ever heard of them? I'm like, yeah, I might have heard of them. But to be able to be like, yeah, you want to go see them? Like, that's
that part.
That is it, right? Like, that is the thing that's like, it makes me emotional to think about. Like, I feel like just being able to give them a life that could have never dreamed of is it. It's like, I got goosebumps right now, right? Like, you talk about like, and so like, I just don't know if being a Black expat has been a thing long enough that we're gonna find people other than like the greats. You talk about Baldwin and that whole crew, who left, but it's like, they're celebrities, right? And so they're doing on a completely different level, right? And so just to be like a regular person with a regular job, and just be like, you know what? I know there's something better out there for me and my family. I'm just gonna take this risk. I'm gonna go out there and see what's out there. Like, that's shout out to us.
You just made me think, like, one of the things I appreciate about interviewing everyday people is it normalizes the process. it doesn't make it so far-fetched and difficult. Yes, I love Baldwin. I love Maya Angelou. Paul Robeson's great. All the, celebrities that have been able to go everywhere else and thrive is great. However, I believe like our experiences are more relatable, right? They're easier to attain. And it's that representation, right? You see it. It's a possibility for you too. So thank you for offering that, because I was thinking and it couldn't quite materialize fully. And with your spark, it helped me to kind of get to that point. And I actually want to do something with that. Y'all be giving me all these ideas, like my brain be storming, man, I'm telling you. So can you please share with us how we can stay in touch, share your journey, watch you continue to succeed?
Sure. Follow me on Instagram at 24AJ. Do not follow me if you're looking for this aspirational, professional content. If you want wholesome dad content, follow me in my journeys.
I love it.
And I try to make some sense of this thing called parenthood and the travels along the way. You see my son. It's mirrors.
Like, we ready.
Of course, you can drop me an email, my first and last name, 24@gmail. And of course, I'm on Facebook, but I don't really look at it. I'm on LinkedIn, but I don't really look at it. So if you're looking to really connect with me, IG is probably the best bet. And then I look forward to having a conversation with anyone who wants to have the conversation. So let's keep the main thing.
Thank you, Dr. Aaron Jones.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So grateful for you spending this time with us and sharing your perspective. And as always, for everyone in the world that is watching and listening, hopefully gleaning something, I encourage you to keep taking those risks, keep impacting your communities, and always prioritizing your mental health. Thank you for joining us today. Share this in your communities. And with that, we are going to bid you adieu. Thank you.